Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture series on analog electronics. It's under Let's Crack the Gate initiative by Technical Faculties. All my details are given on this slide, so I don't want to bore you with this stuff. We have so many other things to bore you with, so let's get into it. In this lecture series, we'll be discussing about analog electronics. So our course of action will be, first we'll discuss about the device, how it is made, how it is working. Then we'll go for the characteristics of that particular device. It is associated with the working only. And then we'll go for the application of that device. So today we are starting our first lecture, and our first lecture will be about a diode, the simplest of the analog devices we know. So let's start. As I said, we are starting a new device. So we'll see how that device is made. Then we'll see how it is working, what makes it tick, and then we'll go for the characteristics and the equivalent circuit. So our first device, as I said, is a diode. Okay, so we know that diode is made of a semiconductor material. So see, these semiconductor materials, they are either silicon crystal or germanium crystal. In their pure state, they are called an intrinsic semiconductor. Not the word intrinsic semiconductor. So in an intrinsic semiconductor, the number of free holes and number of free electrons, they are very less. These free electrons and holes, they have a very short life. So they are not enough to produce useful currents. So we need some method through which we can produce more number of free electrons, more number of free holes, so that we can get a useful current out of a diode or out of a semiconductor material. So what we do is, we will add impurities to the semiconductor material. So in an intrinsic semiconductor, we will add some impurity, and that impurity can be trivalent or pentavalent atoms. So this trivalent or pentavalent atoms will either produce holes, that is a lack of electron, or produce a free electron. If you add trivalent impurities, that will produce a hole. If you add pentavalent impurities, that will produce a free electron. So when you are adding impurities to a semiconductor, at that time that semiconductor is called an extrinsic semiconductor. And this extrinsic semiconductor are of two types. One type is N type. In N type semiconductor, we have free electrons as majority charge carriers, and in P type semiconductor, we have free holes as majority charge carriers. Then if we make a junction by combining these two extrinsic semiconductors, that is P type material and N type material, then magic occurs, and that magic is called diode. But when I say, when we are combining this P type and N type, you might get confused that we will first make a P type semiconductor material, then we'll make a N type semiconductor material, and then we'll combine them. It's not like that. We need bonding at the atomic level between these two P type and N type semiconductor material. So for that, we'll add impurities, and this process of adding impurities is called doping, and we'll dope the same semiconductor material with P type impurity and N type impurity. For the sake of explanation, we'll be saying like we are combining these two. So when we combine these two, we'll be getting a diode, and in a diode, current flows in one direction only. It's called a unidirectional device. We'll see how this is possible, how current can flow in only one direction. Now, let's consider the condition where we have a separate P-type germanium crystal and a separate N-type germanium material just prior to joining them. Okay, so that is shown in this figure. In the top picture, you have an N-type material. In the bottom picture, you have a P-type material. For N-type, we have added some pentavalent atoms. So this gray colored things are impurity atoms. So pentavalent impurity will add a free electron. So this is the free electron. Then in a P-type material, we will add a trivalent impurity, and that trivalent impurity will produce a hole, and hole is actually a lack of electron. Then this electron in N-type material and holes in P-type material, they are called majority charge carriers. Before adding impurities, there were some charge carriers, as I have already said, because of temperature. There were some charge carriers in this intrinsic semiconductor. So they were of very short life, and these things are called minority charge carriers. And this majority charge carriers and minority charge carriers, they are in constant motion. Now we are combining p-type material and n-type material, and the above figure shows the combination. Okay, so we have a p-type material here with its large number of free holes, and n-type material here with its large number of free electrons. So when we combine this p-type and n-type material, what happens is there is a junction where this p and n-type material are just touching. At the junction, we have holes and electrons close proximity. Since they are close, they will start attracting each other. So holes from p-type material will go to the n-type material, and electrons from n-type material will move to the p-type material. So the moving holes and electrons, they will recombine. As I've already said, holes are a lack of electron. If we can fill an electron there, the net charge will become 0. So at the junction, this recombination occurs. Because of the recombination of holes and electrons, their charge becomes 0. And because this recombination occurs, at the n-type, we'll have some positive ions, and at the p layer, we'll have some negative ions. These were the atoms that was associated with the free electrons and free holes. Now as free electrons and holes are recombining, these atoms will get some charge, and these atoms are now ions. Because of this ions, there will be a potential across this junction. So here we have the positive potential, here we have the negative potential. So there is a potential across this junction. Now what happens is, this positive potential will prevent further movement of these holes, and this negative potential will prevent further movement of these electrons. So as time goes, this recombination process decays, and also with distance, this recombination process decays, and this decay is exponential. So with time and with distance, this recombination decays exponentially, and as the junction forms, we'll get device, and this device is called a diode. This is the symbol of a diode, and this p-type material now becomes the anode, and n-type material now corresponds to the cathode. Here we have the cathode, here we have the anode. These are the two terminals of a diode. Now we'll see what are the different characteristics of a diode. So before we get into the characteristics, we need to see how we can connect a diode in a circuit. So there are two terminals available to us. So we can give positive potential here and negative potential here, or we can give negative potential here and positive potential here. So when we give positive potential at the p-type material, and negative potential at the n-type material, you can see that now this is connected to positive potential, this is connected to negative potential. This positive potential will attract this electron, and this negative potential will attract this holes. But there is already a potential here that is preventing this holes and electrons from moving. So when we are giving potential to this diode, we have to overcome this potential. When we overcome this potential, we can have a net movement of electrons and holes. So that brings us to forward bias. So forward bias is that polarity of applied voltage that makes a net flow of current. And this potential at the junction, it is called a barrier potential, and it acts as a barrier to the movement of electrons and holes. So when we break that barrier, we can get a current. So forward bias is that polarity of applied voltage that makes a net current. So ideally, we can say that the diode voltage, that is the voltage across the diode, is, we can represent it as diode voltage Vd. So this Vd must be greater than 0, but it is actually some value greater than 0. For silicon it is some value, and for germanium it is some other value. We'll see what those values are, and that values correspond to the barrier potential or junction potential of this junction. Okay, so during forward bias, what happens to the junction is, let's say this is our diode and this was our junction. Junction doesn't have any free holes or electrons. So as we apply forward bias, the width of the junction decreases. This becomes the new width of the junction. Okay, so when I say that this we give a positive potential to the p-type, or we give a positive potential to the anode and negative potential to the cathode, what I really mean is the anode potential in forward bias, the anode potential should be more positive than the cathode potential. We can actually give two positive potential to these two terminals. That is, we can give 5 volt here and 3 volt here. So that makes anode more positive than the cathode. So this corresponds to positive potential. That is, this corresponds to forward bias. So what happens in reverse bias is that we give a negative potential to the p-type material and positive potential to the n-type material. Now you might have understood that what I mean by negative potential to the p, that is negative potential to the anode and positive potential to the cathode. It is with respect to the other terminal. That is, if I say anode is positive and cathode is negative, that is, anode is more positive with respect to cathode and cathode is less positive with respect to anode. So if I say I am giving negative potential to anode and positive potential to cathode, what I really mean is anode is less positive than cathode and cathode is more positive than. So when we give negative potential to the anode or p-type material and positive potential to the cathode or n-type material, what happens is this negative potential will repel these electrons and this positive potential will repel these holes. So they are moved further away from the junction. So what happens to the junction is, so this was initially the case, this was initially the junction. So when we apply reverse bias, this junction width is increased. So reverse bias means we are applying a polarity of voltage that cannot produce any current. We can say that anode voltage is less than cathode voltage. Now, when I said reverse bias doesn't produce any current, but there is a problem. When we increase the reverse voltage to a very large value, there occurs a breakdown in the junction and that produces a current. Now we'll look into something called an ideal diode. We can give a mathematical representation or mathematical explanation for an ideal diode. That is, if current is greater than 0 for V equal to 0, as we give an infinitesimally small positive voltage, infinitesimally small forward voltage to the diode, there is an instant increase in current. That corresponds to an ideal diode forward bias. If we give a very small negative voltage to a very large negative voltage, in both cases, if we are not getting any current, that corresponds to the reverse bias of an ideal diode. So the characteristics of an ideal diode looks like this. So we have I on the y axis and V on the x axis. When we give even the infinitesimally small positive voltage, that is, even if we give 0 voltage, there is a huge sudden increase in current. And even if we give very high negative voltage, there is no current. This becomes the characteristics of an ideal diode. And if you want to see how it behaves in a circuit, so this part of the graph corresponds to a short circuit. This is the anode and this is the cathode of our diode. And during the reverse bias, this ideal diode will act as a open bias, open circuit. Now we'll see what is the characteristics of a practical diode. So we can show that characteristics graphically, and I am only going to show the forward region in this graph. That is, when we give forward voltage, what happens to the diode. Here we have a voltage and here we have a current. This is the diode current. This is the voltage across the diode. So when we increase the voltage, I have already told you that there is a junction potential. So if we are forward biasing the diode, we have to overcome that junction potential to cause current flow. So as we increase the voltage, initially the current is very small, and after a particular voltage, the current starts to increase, and that voltage is called threshold voltage or knee voltage. So the diode characteristics looks like this, and this characteristics can be represented by a mathematical equation, and that mathematical equation is the diode current ID is equal to some saturation current Is into e to the power Vd divided by eta Vt minus. This equation represents the characteristics of a diode. Now we have the equation for ID as Is into e to the power Vd by eta Vt minus 1, where ID is the diode current, Is is the reverse saturation current, then Vd is the voltage across the diode, eta is the ideality factor, and Vt is the thermal voltage, and it is given by kT divided by Q, where K is the Boltzmann constant, T is the absolute temperature, and Q is the charge of an electron. And ideality factor eta is equal to 1 for silicon, and it is equal to 2 for germanium. And Is is of the order of 10 to the power minus 9 to 10 to the power minus 50. So this equation gives this characteristics. This equation represents this characteristic. Now I've already told you that if we give more than enough negative voltage, there is going to be a breakdown. So we can show that breakdown region also. This is diode current and diode voltage. So when we apply negative voltage to the diode, there is no current flowing, but actually when we apply negative voltage, there will be some current flowing, and that current will be due to minority charge carriers. So after a particular value of Vd, the current will sharply increase in the reverse direction, and this voltage is called a breakdown voltage. And on diode ratings, you will see this voltage as peak inverse voltage rating, PIV, of a diode. Now we will see the resistance of a diode in different conditions. So there are 3 resistances in a diode that we are looking for. If we look at the characteristics of a diode, we can see that there will be an operating point for this diode. That is, if we are applying a DC voltage to a diode, there will be an operating point to the diode. That is, there will be a voltage corresponding to the applied DC voltage. Let's call it VD, and there will be a current corresponding to that DC voltage. That current is called ID. So at this operating point, we'll get a resistance which is called the DC resistance, call it RDC, and it is VD divided by ID. It depends purely on the operating point of this diode. So we have seen that the DC resistance doesn't depend upon the shape of the characteristics of this diode. When we look at the AC resistance, when I say AC resistance, there are two types of AC resistance. One is called dynamic AC resistance, and the other one is called average AC resistance. When we look at the dynamic AC resistance, we know that our diode has an instantaneous operating point, and our applied AC signal will move this operating point up and down a region of this characteristics. So there is a specific range of potential and current on this characteristics for an applied AC voltage. So if we draw a tangent at this operating point, and if we take the voltage difference delta VD and the current difference delta ID, and if we find out a resistance corresponding to this change in voltage and change in current, then we'll get a resistance called the dynamic AC resistance of a diode. Then again, we can find out another resistance on this characteristic. That corresponds to the operating range of this diode. We have ID here and VD here. When we apply an AC voltage, there is a change in voltage of some amount, and correspondingly there is a change in current of some amount. If we take the difference in this voltage and difference in this current, we are not drawing any tangents, we are only taking the limits of this diode, limits of operation of this diode, and if we are finding out the resistance, that resistance will correspond to the average resistance, that is delta VD divided by delta ID. So these are the three resistances associated with a diode. First we have a DC or static resistance, then we have a AC or dynamic resistance found out by drawing a tangent to the instantaneous operating point, then we have a average resistance. Now we'll look into the equivalent circuits of a diode. First we'll go for the piecewise linear equivalent circuit. By converting a diode into its corresponding equivalent circuit, it will become easier to solve problems. That is the reason why we go for equivalent circuits. Now this is our current, and this is our voltage, and here we have our diode characteristic. So if we convert it into two line segments, one line segment will be this one, is corresponding to the on state of the diode, and the other line segment will be this one, which correspond to the off state, that is before the diode starts to conduct. Now we have a diode, there is a voltage Vt. Until Vt, the diode is not conducting. So this voltage Vt can be represented by a voltage source which has a potential of Vt. Then we have our ideal diode. Ideal diode will conduct once there is a zero potential across it, and then this linear portion which corresponds to a resistance, a linear resistance, that will be our RAV. So this circuit is the piecewise linear equivalent circuit of a diode. Now we can go for a simplified equivalent circuit. That is, in most applications, our resistance RAV will be very less compared to whatever circuit is connected to the diode. We can remove this RAV and our simplified equivalent circuit becomes like this: a voltage source which has a potential Vt, the threshold voltage, and an ideal diode. That is the equivalent circuit of a diode. This is the simplified equivalent circuit of a diode, and you can use this circuit, the simplified equivalent circuit, in most of the problems. And then finally there is the ideal equivalent circuit. That means the diode characteristics is ideal. That means the circuit is only a ideal diode. This is an ideal diode. So whatever I have shown, whatever these diodes I have shown in these three circuits, they are ideal diodes. Let me put it here: ideal. This is also ideal diode. This is also, this diode is also ideal. Okay, so that's all for today. We'll see in the next class.